thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm Emily DeFore, and I'm the director of the Folk Pottery Museum. I think I either know you or have met you already, so welcome and thanks for being here. I'd also like to say thank you to all the potters who are on stage, who are in the exhibit, and the others who are here with us in the audience. Your contributions to this exhibit and your work to help us put it together really made my job easier. It's really easy to put together a beautiful exhibit when you have great pots to work with and a beautiful building to work with. So thank you so much. I'd also like to introduce Stuart Swanson and Chris Swanson. They are co-chairs of our trustees here at the museum. Did you want to say a few words, Stuart?
No, just welcome. Chris and I are the co-chairs, and Deanie K. Swanson are our parents, and they're the founders of the Pottery Museum. But we're just super excited to be here, especially the potters that have come from all over South Georgia, North Georgia to be here. But this is what my parents wanted, which is for you to be able to share your craft with as many people as possible, and for as many people as possible to see your craft. And can't wait to hear your commentary. We're very fortunate to have Emily as our executive director. Todd Marks is one of our trustees, and Charlie Thomas is one of our trustees. But we do everything we can to make this place special for you. Chris, you want to say anything?
I was expecting to say anything, but I think this is a fantastic opportunity. We're kind of taking a different turn here with drawing in people from throughout the state and kind of focusing in on that one little piece of the wood firing. And I'm really excited to find out why you decided to wood fire. Now, I've gotten a little bit of that. I found it very interesting already, but thank you for sharing your story. To me, some of this is the most wonderful part of this entire event, is to really get to hear from the potters. We're looking forward to it.
Thanks so much, Chris. And I want to say thank you to Joel Huff, who's in the audience. He didn't want to be up here. Bringing this exhibit idea to me last year, say, hey, we've got this idea. We'd love for you guys to share this story, and being patient with me and working through that process. So thank you, Joel, for what you did to make that happen. So we'll go ahead and get started. So I think we kind of know y'all's names, but if we'll start on that end, Kyle, and just introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Kyle Jones.
I'm Rick Berman. I'm a potter.
Hey, Emily,
Yeah.
can they say what town they're from?
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Tell us where you're
So
from.
I'm Kyle Jones. I'm from Dahlonega, but I live in Athens, Georgia now. So
Okay.
And we live in Atlanta.
Rebecca Wood, Lexington, which is right outside of Athens.
Roger Jameson, Juliet, Georgia.
Liz Bloodgood, Catala, Georgia, which is near Columbus.
Stephen Hawks, Lumpkin, Georgia, and right now I'm staying in Douglas with my mother for a little while.
John Brindley, Midland, Georgia, just outside of Columbus.
Good. Thank you for that. So this is going to be pretty casual and just sort of conversational. I'm going to ask some questions. I may ask you directly, or I may just ask you a question, whoever wants to chime in. So the first question is, how did you first become interested in wood firing? How did you get into it? What was that inspiration, that first spark for you? Anybody want to go first for that?
Collecting.
Collecting. You were a collector, yeah? So tell us about that.
Crawford County, Middle Georgia Pottery. My wife and I tinkered in antiques and in all that. There was pottery involved, and I don't want to say I was gifted, but I was given a pot, and it was a long pottery piece from Crawford County, and she says I've rubbed it to death, and this is, and I probably have, but anyway, I love Crawford County pottery. It's beautiful. The glazes are wonderful, and then I met Stephen, and my life changed for the better. Yes. My pots were terrible when I first started, and then when I met Stephen, I'm picking up my stuff, which is bricks, and then his stuff, which is styrofoam cups, and I'm like, I'm not gonna mess with the work. Not yours. Anyway, so that's my beginnings.
Yeah. So was that when Stephen was at
West Westville, right, yeah.
Okay.
Not 19 years there. 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was there like pretty early on when I was there. There in the mid to early 90s.
It was working at Westville what got you into wood firing, or were you wood firing before you got there?
Well, yeah, that's when I first started wood firing. I read a book in Washington, D.C. area from the only thing in the Gaithersburg Library on raw glazing and oil firing. So I wanted to raw glaze because a lot of this economics. I was like, I didn't have any money or anything, so and I couldn't apprentice in Japan, so I decided to apprentice myself to history, but I grew up with pottery. My father was also a potter down in South Georgia for years, taught at different places. Yeah, so, yeah, and for me, it's also a spiritual path, and it's a part of a larger spiritual path that fit for me when it fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, earth, air, fire, water, all those things, the transformative aspect of clay and fire and all those kinds of things. And they're the transmutation of base materials into something profound. Anyway, so the simple object as well. So my brother-in-law and I used to talk about wood firing, and anyway, that's sort of how I got into it.
Yeah. Well, we'll just go down the line. Liz, if you want to tell us, you sort of got drawn into this as well.
I was very early in learning how, and I actually met John, and I made the mistake of asking if I could help because I was interested in how the old timers would have done it in that process. Because what you see in a little community studio, and just they do all the work behind the scenes, right? Well, that doesn't happen in a wood fire, and I was just really interested in that whole process. And I've
Boy, she
stayed with
learned.
it.
Yeah, learn the hard work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Roger, how about for you?
Well, I was teaching at Mercer University. I was the ceramics professor there, among other things. And I was looking for something to do with my students outside of the classroom. And Jerry Williams in Studio Potter magazine published a design for a little fast fire wood burning kiln called a Phoenix. And I was pretty taken with it. I'd seen a few wood fire pots, in galleries and shows, but I didn't know much about it at the time. I had been doing other kinds of atmospheric firing, salt glazing, raku, even bonfire, open fire firing. But I wrote a proposal to my dean, and it went all the way to the president. But they finally approved it and let me build a kiln on the back campus, kind of hidden behind some trees. It was really a crummy kiln. I mean, it was all salvage brick, and I think I spent $11 of the university's money on that kiln. But we fired it every semester.
Wow.
And what I was taken with was the communal aspect, the community aspect of it. The students loved it, and I did too. And later, I moved outside of Macon and was able to build a couple of kilns. And I have a large wood burning kiln that's fired by a group of friends, and used to be a group of students, but I'm not teaching anymore. So it's old people like me.
I think you touched on something really important that somebody asked earlier. They were saying, so why all the work? Why do you go to all the trouble for wood firing? Because it's so much work. But I think what you touched on is about the sense of community that comes with that, and getting back to the basics of that process, maybe. So it's good that you touched on.
So among other things, I mean, I really like what Stephen had to say about the transformative aspect, and there are lots of other good reasons to wood fire. But
Rebecca?
So many. Well, I never knew anything about wood firing until I got involved with the Perspective show at OCAP in Watkinsville. And that was my first time seeing all the different ways to make pottery, because all I knew how to do was low fire pottery that we were doing at our studio. So Jeff Pickett said, why don't you come on over and, try it? And I was like hooked hardcore the first time because like you say, the community. In case you don't know, of all the artistic types on planet Earth, potters are the best people, period. I'll just tell you that. And the process is super fun. Everyone's a pyromaniac, so we get to burn wood all day long for hours and hours. Like you say, taking a raw material and make something that's gonna last until, they'll dig it up 2,000 years from now and it'll still be there. It's never gonna go away. And it's what I also like about it is the surprise element, because what I do in low fire, you don't have any surprises. Like, you know what it's gonna look like when you come out of the kiln. In the wood fire, it's almost like you're co-creating with the fire, because you make the form and have some idea how you think it's gonna look, but the fire does the work. And the fire is what creates the magic and like the surprise things that you just had no idea. And so it's just so many things about wood firing that's wonderful. That's why I'm in love with it.
I'll have what you said. I've had so many people tell me that if I ever went to Japan, just buy a one-way ticket because you ain't coming back.
Yeah.
And I've always loved those from the ancient kilns, the Shigaraki and Oribe and Tamba and on and on. I've always loved those nasty pots. And I remember Tom Turner told me one time that it's interesting how we collect these old gnarly looking pots, but we try to make really perfect pots. There's something goes wacko in your head, I think. But, and then I happened to be at Hambidge when Ben Owen was building the kiln there. Anybody, how many people have fired at Hambidge, just out of curiosity? Yeah. So I remember Roger, one time we were firing at Hambidge. He wasn't drinking or anything, but there's a hill there, and he was kept backing up just so he could see something. Anyway, he fell backwards off this little hill. You remember that, Roger?
Oh, yes.
He said, I meant to do that. But anyway, yeah, I love all the nasty surface. That's the beauty of it all. And I would tell you one little story. You like stories, right? Can you hear? Because I can't tell. I went to see Lanier Meadows in 1969, the first time. I was at Georgia State. And so over the years, I got to be kind of like family because I was there a lot. I took field trips there with everybody that I ever taught, wherever I was. And so one time we were sitting on his porch, which is right down the street from his kiln. And we're just sitting there shooting the breeze. And this car, let's call it a big old Cadillac, right? Pulls up and rolls down the window. And this guy says, anybody around here making pots? And Lanier looked at him like that and said, nope. You'd have to know him to really understand. All right, sorry.
No, that's good. What are we talking about?
Now you got a new wood fire.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I got into making pots in college where I was studying photography initially. And I liked pots so much, I was in my senior year and I tried to change my concentration and they were like, no, you need to leave school. So I pursued it on my own. Matt, my teacher in the studio or in the audience, kind of encouraged me to, do your own research, and I bought books. I went to workshops. I went to Jeff Pickett's sale once I got interested in wood firing, and I expressed interest in firing the kiln. And he's like, "Where do you live?" And I was like, "Delani." He's like, "That's too far away. You can't fire here." So, so then I tried to sign up at the Hambidge kiln, and I had a trunk full of pots driving up to my first wood firing in Hambidge, and I got in a car accident and destroyed all my pots. So And eventually I ended up in Athens, and that was close enough. And if you don't know why, for Jeff, living too far away was an issue, is because if you live too far away, he can't call you to move wood immediately. And so you get about 2 days notice, and he's like, it's time to move wood, show up. So, and I just like wood firing, the community, the surfaces, and just kind of a sense of connection to just all of human history as far as, you know, making pots goes, all the way back. It's fascinating, it's different every time. The materials you use are finicky, you don't know if it's gonna work. You do the best you can to make it work the best you can. Sometimes the pots are brown, sometimes they're slick brown, sometimes they're beautiful.
We call it 50 Shades of Brown.
50 Shades of Brown. And it's funny because I remember Matt saying to me, like when I first started making pots, I liked really bright glazes. And at one point he was like, yo, brown, you'll learn to love it, you'll get into it. And it happened. I like a brown pot now. I do. I like a brown pot.
So sort of following up on that, the unpredictability of wood firing, that we all know that it's very unpredictable, but do you tend to try to, you kind of have to embrace the unpredictability, or do you guys do, kind of get caught up in trying to control the outcome of that, or how do you approach that as potters in terms of it being unpredictable or trying to control your outcomes?
You're not going to control much.
Yeah.
I mean, you think you are, like, I'll do this clay, I'll put this glaze, I'll put it here in the kiln, and it'll come out like, bing, this picture in your mind. But when you get it out, you're like, you can't even imagine how it got looking like this from how you thought it was going to look. And often, when it turns out like that, you're like, well, that didn't turn out any good. But then years later, you realize it is good. It just is so far from how you thought you were making the pot to look.
Sort of like thinking backwards some, and you, on like say painting, you have to think sort of in reverse how it's going to be at the end, and then you have to do a lot of preparation, but at the same time you can't control everything, and it's a long learning curve, very long learning curve. And I do have one good quote from DX Gordy, the guy that built the kiln I use. He said, you have to listen to the kiln, and this is just for the firing part of it. It will tell you what it needs, but if you don't prepare, you don't have what it needs, then you can't give it to it. So there's both of those things.
Yeah, my colleague at Mercer was a painting teacher. He's talking about paintings, but I think it's true about pots too. Is that since you tell the students, your paintings eventually have to have a life of their own, and I think that's the way you have to think about wood-fired pots. You put them in the kiln, but things are going to happen. They're going to go their separate ways. They're going to become something that you might not have imagined they would. And sometimes it's wonderful, and sometimes it's horrifying, really. But disappointing anyway.
Or you have to learn to love it. You see it later, and you say, "Oh, well, that's not that bad." But you had a whole kiln of them, right?
That's
Right.
A whole kiln of them.
best advice I ever got was like, take the pots, even if you don't like them, put them somewhere you
Yeah.
can't see them for a month.
Yeah. Or 2 years.
And look at them one at a time or
Yeah,
in groups.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've never sold a pot, so I look at mine all the time.
You don't sell?
I try to.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a whole house full of my stuff.
Well, it takes a lot of time to educate the public about what wood firing is all
Right,
about,
right.
because I have a low fire ceramic studio. We do all brightly colored dinnerware, and when I first started putting my wood fired pots up there, everyone's like, why is that more expensive than your usual stuff and it's just brown? So I had, all the time postcards and pictures and explain the process and all that. It's a lot of work, especially if like Jeff makes you go cut all the wood for it before you even do anything. I've gotten out of that part luckily. But it's a lot of work, but it's so worth it because when you finally come together, like I said, the community is so great. The process is fun. I mean, it takes up a good couple of weeks. And then the funnest thing is unloading. Like unloading day at Jeff Pickett's kiln, where you got like 6 or 8 potters. You got, who knows, 500 or 600 or more pots in there. It's just like Christmas. Like I get so excited to unload the kiln, I can't sleep, and I'm counting down the days because you have to let the kiln cool off for a week before you can take the doors down and look in there. And in the case of Jeff Pickett, he's the only one allowed to like bring pots out of the kiln and examine each one because he knows every spot in his kiln, if it's cooler, if it's hotter, if it gets more salt, all these things. So he places them specifically to get the best effects out of them. And so he's, each one is critically judged and, everyone passes it around. There's lots of questions like, what glaze is that? What clay is that? So it's a big learning situation at the end when all the pots come out. We learn so much from each other. And then, you can't wait for the next one, but it's 6 months because you only do it twice a year. So you have to remember like what the things are you want to try and what you're learning, so you can apply it. And then in 6 months, you try again with what you've learned from this wood firing and try to get better results this time. So it's a big cyclical learning situation, but it's super fun. Everything about it's super fun.
And thank you for bringing that up about the kilns and the differences where the pieces are and how that affects the pots.
Believe it or not, there's hot spots and cool spots
Yeah.
in a 2,300 degree kiln.
Sometimes they're only that.
Yeah, relatively.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a big part of what this exhibit is about, is to show a little bit of educational so people will understand that, but also see the wide variety of pots coming out of the different kilns around the state. And so if anybody wants to speak to that about the different types of kilns and how that affects the firing, because what comes out of Roger's kiln or John's kiln or, that's going to have a different sort of feel to it.
Yeah, I would just say the 11th commandment is know thy kiln.
Yeah, there you go.
There's always that story about Warren McKenzie in this one place. This is a gas-fired kiln. He had this one spot in the kiln, it's probably like bottom right, let's say. And it always oxidized. You never could get a pot to do anything there. So finally, you just realize all you got to do is just mix up a glaze that melts there. I mean, how stupid can you be if you can't figure that out, right? And that's what he did. And he has this most beautiful rebate green glaze that he used for years. It was all in the worst part of the kiln.
You said Warren McKenzie?
Mhm.
You said Warren McKenzie?
Yeah.
I have one of those green tea balls. Yeah. Speaking specifically, kind of like there's like different ideas about how to fire, and for me, I was working at a place, so I didn't do long firings, and that's one of the biggest difference we have in this group. Is that there are some that do really long firings, and that's usually the norm now. And then there's those that do fast firings. For me, I was the only one firing for a while, and then I got help from John and Ned Barry and some other folks, so it got to be a little less pressure on me. It was physically exhausted. My wife said the first time I fired it, that I glowed, literally glowed when I was done. It was like 20 hours long or more, like 25 hours. And I still didn't reach temperature in the back because there was something wrong with the kiln, and it took me years to figure out what was wrong. But anyway, like the difference between faster firings and slower firings. A modified groundhog kiln versus anagama, that kind of thing.
Like he's saying, there's everything from like a fast fire, which is like 12 hours from start to finish. And then like in Japan, they do 10-day firings. And the longer you fire, the more ash gets on your pots. Because in case you don't know, the ash gets up out of the firebox and travels through the kiln and it lands on all the pots, which are just glowing, molten, raw clay, and sticks on there and forms its own glaze or accents, whatever you have on there. So, if you have enough manpower or enough wood, you can fire as long as you want to.
But you can also melt everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's say and clay that can handle that.
Right.
And shells will stay.
But the thing is, you're feeding the
Eating
fire
those
every
plastic helpers though.
15 minutes or so around the clock for however many days you do the firing. That's why you need a whole crew, or if you don't have a crew, that's why you do a 12-hour firing, because you have to be on it, like pay attention and be with that fire for that 12 hours or however many days you're doing it.
Those highest temperatures, there's nothing like it because it's like wool, and it looks like it's coming backwards, and it's actually going forwards, and it looks like this whitest cotton like you're in the middle of the sun or something. It's just the most bizarre thing.
Feels that way too.
Yeah.
It feels so. Because when you peep in the kiln, everything's glowing orange and just looks like it's vibrating in the heat. So, and then it turns into stoneware. It's like stone. You're taking minerals of the earth, making a pot, and it turns literally to stone. That's why they call it that. Something that can last forever. It's just an incredible process.
Thank you for that. And talking about the atmospheric effects in the kiln with the different types of wood or using salt and soda, what kind of goes into your process of deciding what you're going to do, for your pieces and in your kiln? Influences or?
Well, usually your kiln is a soda kiln or a salt kiln or just a straight up
Right.
wood kiln, because the salt leaves so much residue in there that it's kind of forever regassing and getting in the air again. Soda kilns get more splashy effects. You throw some soda in there when everything gets really hot at a certain temperature, and it just kind of causes a lot of razzle dazzle.
Well, I have a salt kiln and a wood kiln. They're both wood fired, but the salt kiln is a salt kiln partly because I want it to be a short firing. It's a tube kiln that I fire for about 20 hours. And if I just fired it for 20 hours, the unglazed clay part of the pots would be very dry. But if I throw some salt in, the salt will melt the surface enough to
Gets glossy.
make a satiny, sometimes shiny surface. And that happens in the wood kiln, but it takes 5 days in my kiln. And
To build up that much.
and even at a 5-day firing, my kiln, the flame is quite directional. The kiln is built on a hillside, and the inside is stepped up the hill. And so the kiln itself acts like a chimney, so that it draws the flame upward. And the velocity is fast enough that the pots are quite one-sided. You'll have a hot side that's quite melted, and then a back side that's drier and calmer. And that's part of what I like about them, is that they often have 2 or more personalities when you look at them one way. In fact, the little jar that I have in the show really has 2 personalities, and I wish it was turned around. I like
See,
the
when I
ones.
came in, I know Rebecca said that when I came in, I was like, "Ooh, this is in my vision, it's
That's
this
the one-
person would, this
yeah.
is the side that should go out."
Anyway,
and then the potter has a different
So that's
perspective.
another thing that happens
It's
with
directional, yeah.
Yeah.
with wood, and my reason for doing salt is mainly to shine up the pots in a shorter fire.
Yeah. There's also a thing, if anybody doesn't know about the chemistry of it, there's in wood you have all of the things that are in feldspar, which is like soda, potassium, calcium, all these things are in trees. And so those are your fluxes, and they melt everything else. So it also has aluminum and silicate in it, just like other kinds of glazes, but it's a natural glaze, if you can call it natural. That people are standing there throwing stuff in a wood kiln, or human beings natural. I guess you can ask that. But anyway, it's the same thing. It's just the temperature that's needed, because the salt and the soda are direct fluxing, and the ashes is somewhat indirect fluxing, so it needs a very much higher, because it's less of it.
In time.
Yeah, time. Yeah.
For sure.
More heat, more time. Yeah.
Well, and different woods have different qualities to them too. So use hardwoods take longer to melt the surfaces to get them shiny. In pine, you get shiny surfaces pretty fast. I fired in Florida, and their wood, my understanding is at some point the land was flooding frequently, so there was more salt and sodium in the soil, so the wood takes up more sodium. So they were telling me, like, Don Wright's built that kiln, and the first time they fired it, they opened it up, and he was like, shit, the pots they look like they're salt fired, they're all bleached out. And the further back in the kiln you went, the more wood fired it looked, but those pots in the front, like they look salt fired. So,
That's not.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a real thing to know. If you just do straight wood fire and don't have any soda or salt added, like Roger said, it's real directional. The flames are just hitting the one side of the pot and then going around to the next one. But salt and soda is atmospheric, which means it kind of gets in there and explodes. So your whole pot is going to get more covered with shiny surfaces or interesting surfaces, not just one side like a straight up wood fire.
You could also fume with calcium, so you could fume with any kind of flux probably.
You ever heard of hanging a tin can over the firebox when it's dead?
I had this horrible experience. I had a galvanized thing like this, you know, and it was all rusted out of the bottom, so I just threw it in the fire. And I looked in there, and it was near the end of the fire, right? And there were spider webs all throughout the kiln. And it had gone through the whole kiln, and I was like freaked out because I thought it had ruined the whole thing. But afterwards, when I finally opened it, I fired it a little longer. Everything smoothed out, and it was amazing. Yeah, so things like that. I mean, like I kind of did just about anything. That's why my health is not great. Stuff like, you know, I didn't know any better, and I used wood that had lead paint in it, and that was actually some of the most beautiful glazes. Holy cow! I think there's like some people that like probably on this panel that would just like really turn their nose up on that kind of issue. But for me, it was all economics and a kind of ecology to reuse things that I found. Not the galvanized bucket though.
Well, you mentioned we fired with salvage wood from, it probably was painted with lead. We had some wonderful firings.
It's high enough that lead's probably not.
Thinking about the wood that we use, we burn mostly beetle-killed pine in my kiln.
Yeah.
And trees that have been knocked down. We burn very few trees that are cut down for that purpose. We either keep trees that get blown down in the storm or that have to be taken out for building or something like that. But
Mostly I fired with pallet wood from a dump.
I used to get a lot of wood from a pallet factory, but that dried up.
Yeah.
That's a key thing, is getting the wood, because you're going through cords of wood. And of course, you don't want to go out and buy like firewood for that. So what Jeff Pickett would do is, there was a guy nearby that had a sawmill, and he was sawing the sides off of huge pine trees and throwing all the bark things over in a pile like 16 feet long. So we would go there and get all those 16 feet long pieces of outer bark, make it in a huge pile, and then Jeff would climb up on top of it with a chainsaw, cut it down the middle so he had an 8-foot that would fit in the back of the truck. Then we'd ride that over to his studio, stack it meticulously according to Jeff's methods and protocols. And then he's got several wood piles around his yard he knows how old exactly each one is, the caloric value they have left, you know, which one we need to use next. It's a whole system just with the wood for the fire.
Yeah, there's a lot of, there's another thing about, you can't just burn any wood in any condition and expect it to work. It has to be old enough, has to be
Dry
seasoned, has to be the right type of wood, because certain types of wood don't burn very hot.
Like sweet gum.
I somewhat agree with that, but there's this thing that if you get hot enough, water is hydrogen and oxygen, and it will actually volatilize at the highest temperatures.
And you can use it to your benefit too, with those higher temperatures to keep.
I mean, I the shed where I work, it leaked like a sieve and it burned down, and I had wet wood all the time. I literally had anxiety about every time it rained. I was so glad when I didn't have that anxiety anymore. So, because, I mean, anyway, never mind. It's just
There's a lot to it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to contradict you. You're right, but that was like maybe it's actually burning the hydrogen now.
Well, it's and there's another thing that I don't do it, but the downfiring with water, like a reduction cooling.
Oh yeah.
Which is like, instead of actually throwing wood in as it's going down, they drip water in to create that artificial reduction. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
So I bought a sawmill to take care of all my wood cutting.
That must be nice.
I pick it up with a tractor, set it on the mill, saw it down, cut it once or twice with a chainsaw, pick it up with a tractor and take it to
A lot of
all
time.
the stuff that Rebecca was speaking of with the group, and it's fine if you can have a group that can show up on time and get it all done. It's wonderful. But most of the time, there's always a problem. Somebody's not there, somebody can't be there. And so anyway, I start thinking, the older I get, I need to start working smart.
Yeah. I have a theory about how salt glazing came to be. And I know it's true because I only have truthful things to say about it. Pottery is pottery truth. Anyway, so it started in Germany. This is like in the 1600s. So they didn't have trucks, so they're moving wood along in the ocean, right, to get it to towns or whatever. So while it's in the ocean, it's sucking up salt. So it's impregnated with salt. So then when they fired the kiln, they found that the saltiest wood made the glossiest pots. So I know, it just makes real sense. It makes a lot of sense to me. And,
I heard it was fish crates.
Yeah, salted herring.
Yeah,
yeah, it
barrels.
It depends on whose
Yeah.
lives you're listening.
That's right.
Those are the lies.
The pocket full stories.
So anyway, now these German potters learned how to do this just by serendipity, which is the way everything gets learned.
Yeah.
And then those guys start moving to New York, Pennsylvania area. All those white pots with blue decoration, it's all salt. And those were, I would say, definitely German potters that made a lot of those pots, or at least influenced that town or that pot making place.
I love
So yeah, it's a theory.
It's beautiful.
That's a good one.
Why not?
So what do you guys think is the biggest challenge to keep wood firing going and alive and future generations picking this up?
Affording the property to have a kiln on,
Yeah.
That's one.
sourcing wood.
Sourcing wood seems to be a big thing, yeah.
Plenty of time.
Wood's not that hard to get.
Not South Georgia.
Well,
Not South Georgia,
No.
but I get most of mine from neighbors that, I'm cutting this tree down, do you want it? Absolutely. And it could be anything. It started off being anything. And then I kind of started getting selective. Nah, I don't want the sweet gum for the kiln, but I'll take it for something else. But I only wanted pine from the, once I started learning my kiln, pine was it. And I could control the kiln better with pine. And I used the sweet gum for mantles and other things once I got the sawmill.
I don't know, I think almost every school has a wood kiln now.
Yeah.
When I was teaching, there were 2 wood kilns at schools that I knew of were in Georgia. And so there's a lot of interest in wood firing, and a lot of people are learning to like wood fire pots, especially a state or 2 north of us.
Right.
Well, the tradition there.
But, so I don't know. I'm hopeful that it's an alternative to the mechanized AI world. It's something that's so different than the high tech lives that we live at least part of the time. It's a nice foil for that, for me. Not just doing it, but using the pots. Let's see. One thing we really haven't talked about is use. Is the thing that happens to you when you drink a cup of coffee, the same cup every day, because you love the way it feels and you love the way the coffee tastes in it. And that's something that you don't get from a Walmart cup,
It's the second most intimate thing in your house.
So,
Depending on your
and I think that's what makes pottery unique as an art form. Is the fact that we touch it, we use it, we experience it, not just visually, but we feel its weight, we feel its texture, we feel its warmth if it has something in it. And there's so many senses involved in appreciating a pot that and I'll get activated by wood-fired pots. So,
Did y'all know there are 20 wood fire kilns in Georgia?
That's impressive.
That's
20.
for Joel's research.
2021.
All right.
So he just built a kiln. There's
All
21.
right.
22 in the making.
He just built a kiln. 21.
21.
22 in the making.
Looking into rebuilding the DX plant.
Daniel's building count too.
All right.
23.
Maybe.
He's working on
All right.
Maybe. I don't know.
rebuilding another kiln.
If my back can stand it.
So let's
By
see.
Young Hill.
Oh, yeah.
By
Rex.
Young Hill.
Yeah, young help, exactly.
So let's open it up for questions from the audience. Does anyone have questions for our panel? Daniel?
So, what is the school of thought for firing hours upon hours and days upon days? What is the reasoning? What is your personal philosophy for doing that?
Results.
Okay.
If you like lots of ash and lots of gooey looking glaze and gorgeousness, you just want to fire and fire.
Okay.
But it depends on how much crew, can your crew work every day for, 10 days or whatever?
Yeah.
Do you have enough wood?
Yeah.
There's things involved.
Can your clay take it?
Can your clay handle it?
we fire for 5 days with my big kiln. And the reason we do that is because we can't get the back hot enough if we don't fire 5 days. So it takes us that long to get the kiln even with side stoking, which is where we throw thin sticks of wood in between the stacks of pots. As we go back up towards the chimney. And it just takes that long to finish that kiln. It's 24 feet long inside. And we start melting the stoneware cones the first night in front. But those same cones don't start bending until, at least 4 or 5 days later in the back of the kiln. And that's our reason for a long firing. And of course, if we don't get it that hot, the pots in back are underfired and uninteresting.
Dry.
You have to redo them.
So,
And if you don't know what cones are, they're how we measure heat work. The little things we put in to indicate how much work has been done on the glazes. Because we have temperature well, I don't know, everybody use pyros? Yeah, so we have pyrometers that measure the temperature in the kiln, but there's an amount of time required, just like with baking. You put bread in the oven, it's got to bake for X amount of time before it's done. Kilns are the same way, and the cones measure the amount of work done rather than the temperature, so.
Yeah, in Westville, I tried to use cones, but it did no good. They melted really fast because it'd been salted for years. And so you just had to look to the back row, and I finally figured out how to make the entire kiln do it. But speaking to that, I already brought that up about the fast versus slow. For me, it was a practical thing. And also the size of the kiln, definitely. So a smaller kiln is going to fire faster if it's built right. Yeah, so you can actually fire with wood in 4 hours in certain kilns, and you can probably get good results too. It just depends on what kind of results you want. Yeah, if you're using glazers.
yeah, our Mercer kiln fired in 7 hours,
Yeah,
which was great because students didn't want to stay for
right, exactly.
2 hours for each day.
That's the hardest
So,
2 hours.
Yeah.
Get
It
somebody
was
to
a
stay.
one-day thing, and it worked great. But we'd get to stormwater temperatures and an even kiln in just a few hours.
And at John's kiln, most of the pots in his kiln, we once fired, which means they're going in green. They just dried and we're putting them in, so we need to actually take them through a bisque cycle
It's
first,
slow.
which
It is.
slows it way down in the front end. And so we usually take about 16, 18 hours to take that through a bisque cycle first, and then we start pushing it. But in his kiln, it can take 2-3 hours to make that heat move back 3 feet. So the front's done, and you're like, okay, now we gotta wait for it to get in the back before we can start salting, because the
This is where
salting.
you lose help.
that stacking and like the kiln I use, I threw logs in for my pre-fire and just cut the air off.
Mhm.
A small fire all day, just like a campfire, threw logs in there when there were enough coals and left it overnight, and then fired the next day. So I got a lot of ash just not even being there. So, and the effects of the salt and the soda, and also I had a limestone and soda mix later. I couldn't take the breathing in the stuff after a while, so I had to switch to soda and limestone, and that wound up being a slower firing, but I got some of the same kinds of effects that you're talking about. Not always, but by the end of the last 5 years were the best firings. I had to knock a hole in the back wall. I finally realized that the salt had sealed some of the flues closed. Yeah, stacking has a lot to do with how it fires too.
Yeah, and the massive pots in the kiln too can make
Yeah,
it
right.
fire a lot longer. You got like a kiln full of flower pots where they're big, but there's a lot of empty space in them. It can fire faster than you think. But if you got a bunch of shelves, a bunch of mugs, a bunch of small things, it can slow things
Kind
down.
of blocks the fire.
Yeah, you have to have something to hold the heat. Like the first times I fired at Westville, I didn't have enough work to fill it, and I didn't have a stacking method because it's a tall kiln as opposed to a low groundhog kiln. So you had to have DX used saggers, so I used saggers. I built saggers, and so eventually I had enough to fill the kiln. But those first firings, I could literally watch the heat just leave because there was nothing to hold it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there a question up front here? Yeah.
Yeah. This is more about your practice. I'm thinking a lot about the depletion of ceramic resources, like you just lost Custer, and we have a lot of replacements like for Albany and Alberta. Wondering how those changes in availability of resources have impacted your practice and how that's either you've shifted your material usage, whether that's clay bodies, slips, glazes, whatever it may be, and how that's impacted your commitment to wood firing or your firing processes.
Roll the punches.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And you can also try and source locally, dig clay and that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's not easy. It's like, for one thing, having land makes a difference. And if you don't have the land, you've got to get permission and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, like you find happy accidents and sometimes you find disasters. Bauxite is mined down in South Georgia, and I thought this beautiful, looked like a ball clay was ball clay, but it was actually bauxite, so it was high aluminum. I didn't test enough because I didn't have a small test kiln, so my firings were my tests. Like at least half the load just cracked, and it wasn't right away. It was like later. They'd just be sitting there, and suddenly it goes, and you'd hear this horrible sound, and almost all of that firing just was destroyed. So yeah, sourcing materials, but you got to know something about materials. So, and red clays can be mixed with fire clay, and there's a lot of red clays. There's red clay almost everywhere in the country. So, and Georgia definitely has a lot of red clay. And they used to call the Kiln in Georgia, which is one of the most prevalent clays that's distributed all over the world for paper products, a lot of it. But it could eventually run out. It could eventually run out, but it's still something you could probably go to the mine. Adipolgus clay, I actually tried to use that. It's more like a gummy bentonite. It worked really weird, but it would be great as a plasticizer. So you could go to the mines and like actually talk to the people, and once the mines close, maybe you even find access to them and go there yourself, because they're not mining them because they don't make money for industry. Potters, and they've learned that is a market, but it's not a big enough market for some things.
Like 1% or 0.5% of 0.5%.
Yeah, and we're using the stuff that industry doesn't want usually.
Minuscule amounts.
Too impure for.
Living on the fall line is wonderful because all the materials are vast and varied, and you can do a lot of experimentation. You can lose a lot of stuff.
The Yules sell clay, but that could be modified to take high temperatures. I think they still sell clay. There used to be a Lizella clay, I think is still mined. A lot of potters use that. It could be modified. I recently modified that with whatever I had in my studio. I hadn't worked in there for a while. So I developed a Lizella clay, because a lot of people look down their nose at Lizella. It's a brittle stoneware with a lot of iron in it. So you can take it up to cone 9, but it really needs something else to make it where it's not porous. So a lot of the red clays, they're really porous because of the other things in them. Yeah.
It can go higher.
Yeah, it can go high. Yeah.
Any other questions out here?
On that note, who has the lead on the potassium feldspar deposits in Georgia?
What do you mean?
I mean, where are we going to get our potassium feldspars? I know Monticello used to have the G200 mine, of course, and like there's surely other available deposits around. Just like for source of materials, I mean, clearly Custer's gone, and I know we've got Mahavir and
Process ash
and everything, but I don't know. Surely someone's got to have a pile of feldspar on the surface of the earth somewhere.
Somewhere.
Go find it.
Yeah.
I got some leaves. I just want to
Go dig it. Go to the old mine and dig.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe don't follow his advice.
Don't follow my advice. That's my daughter.
Make sure you don't get arrested for trust.
There's nothing wrong with what he said now. It works.
No, you can find things. Yeah, ask permission. Definitely. You might get shot.
Your child. I think you brought me on some of those things. You brought me on some of the expeditions to trespass, I think, as a kid.
Where?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, we used to drive around in the truck looking for clay on the side of the road. She would be in her she was a baby back then.
Was that it's like, don't shoot, I have a baby.
I just go on the side of the road. It's owned by the county. Yeah.
Those are always good spots where they're cutting new roads.
Yeah.
Go through the hill and beautiful veins of clay.
Nothing else, you can make flower pots.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes. Okay, well, thank you so much. Do you guys have anything else to add? Maybe advice for up and coming potters, people who are looking to get into wood firing?
Advice for potters?
Yeah.
Young potters? Marry a thoracic surgeon.
Okay.
All right, well, thanks.
Somebody that'll put up with you.
Yeah.
An understanding thoracic
Yeah,
surgeon.
there you
Understanding.
go. It's an obsession to some extent.
Yeah, try it and you'll get hooked. That's all I can say.
All right, well, thanks so much.
Thank you.
all. I
Thanks
appreciate
for
you all
having
being
us.
here, and thank you guys for participating.